the shockingly low price and their need for a fresh start, they ignored the stories. It's just superstition, the kind of nonsense that small towns thrive on, Greg Harper told his wife, Ellis. Their daughter, Sophie, wasn't convinced. From the moment they entered the house, they felt something was wrong. The floors creaked under their weight, the walls seemed to breathe, and everywhere in the house there was a door she'd never seen before that seemed to whisper. The little things came first. Doors locked at night would open in the morning. Things would disappear and appear in strange places. Milo the cat would refuse to come into the basement and would growl in empty corners. Then came the sounds, whispers that snaked across the walls in the night, too faint to make out but persistent enough to wake them. Then the dreams. Ellis would wake up drenched in sweat, certain she'd heard something calling her name, while Greg dismissed it all as just stress. One evening, while unpacking a box in the hallway, Sophie saw it. A door she hadn't noticed before, embedded deep in the wall near the stairs. It was an ordinary wooden door with a rusty handle. "Mom," she called, "have you seen this door before?" Ellis turned to her, looking surprised. "He wasn't here yesterday." Greg joined them, sarcastically. "It's an old house. It's probably hidden behind something. Let's check." The handle was ice cold in Greg's hand. The door creaked as it slowly opened, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air that seeped in was damp and musty, like rotting flesh. A deep reverberating sound rose from below, something moving in the darkness. "No," said Ellis, stepping back. "Not tonight." But Sophie was staring down, fascinated. A flickering light bulb illuminated the stairs just enough to reveal old claw-like scratches on the walls. She took a step forward, tugging at something she couldn't name. But Milo lunged from beside her, growling, and ran into the kitchen. The spell was broken. That night, they locked the door. But that didn't matter. At 3:12 a.m., a deep cracking sound resounded through the house, startling Greg and Ellis. Then came another sound, and another. The sound of something banging on the closed door. Greg grabbed the baseball bat and crawled toward the stairs. The clicking stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. The house held its breath. Then I clicked the lock. The door slowly opened, revealing the black void inside. A whisper swirled, wrapping around Greg's ears like wet fingers. "We see you," Ellis shouted from the top of the stairs. Greg stumbled back as something emerged from the darkness. At first it looked human, then its joints bent in ways they shouldn't. His face was too long, taut as if someone had pulled the skin over a broken skull, and his eyes, empty black holes, fixed on him. The creature opened its mouth, but instead of words, it made a rough sound, like bones scraping against metal. Sophie was frozen at the top of the stairs, staring. The creature turned its head as if to acknowledge her. Then it jumped. Greg shook the stick, but the creature moved with unreasonable speed, dodging as if anticipating the strike. Its outstretched fingers latched onto Greg's shoulder. The scream it let out was not entirely human. Ellis grabbed Sophie, pulling her back. "Run!" They ran up the stairs, closing the bedroom door behind them. The house was filled with a sound that no living creature should make. Then came the silence. A scratching sound came from the other side of the door. Slowly, deliberately. "We see you." The whisper crept under the door, curling into their ears, into their minds. The handle rattled. Then, the door started to open. The next morning, the house was silent. No one found the Harper family. No blood, no bodies. Just a house with one more door than it should have, slightly ajar, whispering for new visitors to enter. A week later, a new family arrived. The Thompsons, a husband and wife with their young son, excited to start over. The door was closed when they moved in, but as night fell and the house grew quieter, the whispers returned. "We see you." That night, their son, Jacob, was awakened by the sound of scratching at his bedroom door. Small, incessant. He sat up, his heart pounding. "Mom," he whispered. The scratching stopped. The silence stretched on for a very long time. Then, just as he was about to lie down again, he heard it. A voice. "Jacob," he whispered from behind the door. He froze. The voice was his mother's, but it wasn't right. It was so flat, empty, as if something was imitating her. "Mom?" He tried again, his voice dry. The door handle turns slowly. Jacob clutched his blanket, holding his breath. He opened the door slightly, and in the darkness behind him, two empty black eyes stared at him. The whisper came again. "We see you." As Jacob stared into those black eyes, his heart was beating rapidly, his mind almost refusing to believe what he was seeing. But he felt something strange, something he couldn't explain, pressing on him from every side. Every part of his body was screaming to escape, but he froze in place, unable to move or even scream. The whispers grew louder, penetrating his mind like shards of broken glass. "We see you. We see you, Jacob." The voice was clearer now, but distorted, as if it came from the depths of darkness itself. At that moment, the eyes moved. They moved slowly, but with an unnatural movement, as if something inhuman was controlling them. They began to move closer to the door. At that moment, a shiver ran through Jacob's body, and the room became strangely still. Even the air itself seemed heavy, unnatural. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath his feet, and something heavy fell from inside. It was an unusual sound, as if something had fallen in the dark corner of the room. But nothing was clear. Nothing was visible except darkness and wild eyes. Then something happened that Jacob never expected. The door opened suddenly and completely, almost letting the dim light from the street into his eyes. But the eyes remained in place, becoming clearer and more focused on him. At that moment, he felt something touch his shoulder, something very cold, as if a dead hand had reached out to him. The hand was dry and hard, lifeless, but it controlled him. Jacob stepped back in fear, but his feet could not move as they usually did. He tried to scream, but the sound was stuck in his throat. Before he could escape, his mother heard a voice climbing the stairs, her voice broken and scattered. It seemed as if she were somewhere deep in the house, but out of his reach. "Jacob." Her voice filled the void, but he could not answer. Suddenly, the whole house began to shake, as if something huge was moving inside it, something invisible but tangible. At that moment, Jacob felt as if the walls themselves were pressing down on him. Then, out of the darkness, the creature appeared again, now more distinct, so hideous that Jacob felt his eyes would burst with terror. The creature was approaching quickly. It was twisting and changing shape, its parts moving in impossible ways, its skin stretching around a skeleton. With each step, the whispers quickened, more distinct now. "We see you, Jacob. We see you. We always see you." Then suddenly, the voices stopped, and the creature disappeared, just as it had appeared, replaced by an eerie silence. His mother finally returned, standing in the doorway, looking as if she had no idea what had happened. But Jacob knew. Her eyes were empty, and her voice was so low it didn't sound like her real voice. "Mother," Jacob whispered, watching carefully. The voice answered, but as if it had come from somewhere else. "Yes, I'm here. We're here." Jacob held on to the door, but at that moment, he felt something very cold touch his heart. The silence was terrible, and his eyes widened in horror. Before he could escape, the door was quietly closed, locking him in the darkness.